Rick and Morty has been on the air for 13 years now. That's a long time. I started watching during the break between Season 2 and Season 3, and I've loved it ever since. And I have opinions. Lots and lots of opinions. I hold Rick and Morty near to my heart. It's a show that I genuinely will defend until the end of time. The good episodes, that is. Which is most of them, but there are a few stinkers. The show varies wildly in quality from season to season. Hell, even episode to episode. Which ones are the good ones and which ones suck? Well, that's the question I'll be answering today. I'll be going up the tier list, starting with the worst and ending with the best. And don't worry, I'll make sure to make it clear when we enter a new tier. I'm sure the comments are already full of people disagreeing with my rankings, so you might as well go join them, but make sure to keep it respectful. At the end of the day, this is just a stupid cartoon. My opinion on what episode is the best has no effect on you at all. By the way, I won't be talking about any episodes released in Season 10 or after. Not because they're not out yet when I film this, but simply because I don't like them. Anyway, let's begin in DOGASS tier, starting with number 91, Rise of the Numericons, the movie. I was in denial. I wanted to have this higher. I did have it higher, because I wanted to respect the ethos of the episode. This fuck it we ball attitude. The we don't need main characters thing. But it's not funny or interesting, and they shoehorn Morty in so they can't even commit to not having any main characters. And honestly, I'd respect them more if this episode had neither Rick nor Morty appear. But of course not, because that would be an actually interesting idea. And all of the math is complete nonsense.
A squared is the length of the galaxy. B squared is the height. So C squared takes you directly to...
For a show that people used to pride on needing a high IQ to understand, this is just embarrassing. The only thing in this episode that I even kind of like is the two characters arguing over whether this ancient artifact is an I or a 1. It's kind of clever, I guess. But it's mostly just non-stop bullshit being thrown at you. Like this sidekick to the big bad guy.
Oh my god, he's a number? Did you know? I didn't.
Also, they try to make Goldenfold an actual character, and it just doesn't work at all. I don't care about his past relationship with fucking iced tea, or water tea. At no point in the episode was I ever even slightly curious what the backstory was. That being said, I do like President Curtis. This is actually the first episode of the series where one of the titular characters doesn't appear at all, and it's Rick. You'd think there'd be an episode where Rick appears without Morty, but nope, it's the other way around. Is what I had written here until Season 8 had an episode without Morty. Anyway, what can I say about this episode that isn't evident from just observing it? It was doomed to fail. It was a sequel episode, and those aren't typically well liked, and Rick, the fan favorite, doesn't appear in it at all. I feel like this episode doesn't understand why the after credits scene was funny in Season 2. It was funny because no one in their right mind would ever want to actually watch that movie. It's just really bad. Next. Number 90. Rick and Morty's Thanksploitation Spectacular. This episode truly sucks and encompasses pretty much everything that was wrong with Rick and Morty's 4th and 5th seasons. In this episode, Rick and Morty turn into turkeys so they can be pardoned by the US president for all the crimes they committed. If you didn't know, the US president pardons a turkey every Thanksgiving and it's not killed for dinner. For some reason. But that doesn't really matter, since this episode then becomes about a random turkey being mistaken for the president and taking over the government. So, Rick, Morty, and the president have to team up to stop him, revealing a secret underground vault with Thanksgiving aliens that show up and save the day. It's such a nothing burger of an episode. Sure, on paper a lot happens, but when you watch it, it's just nothing. I guess Rick and the president's interactions lead to some funny moments, but barely.
The turkey president's got an army, an actual army, and an air force, and Marines!
Slow down, Morty. Walk us through every military service. Does somebody have a pen?
No Rick and Morty episode is devoid of comedy, but this episode gets close, thinking its let's do random, vaguely Thanksgiving-themed things attitude is enough to carry it for 20 minutes, but it's not. Sure, this episode never drags, but that's because it keeps introducing new bullshit that never comes back. Random bullshit happening is a pretty common theme in this era of Rick and Morty, so get used to me bringing this point up. A good Rick and Morty episode has an emotional core, but the only emotion this one makes me feel is cringe and a little bit bored. Number 89. Claw and Hoarder Special Rickdoms Morty. This episode is so bad. Not only is it a terrible episode name, but it's just plain terrible. This was the first episode that, to me, sort of felt like they just stopped giving a shit. Do I even have to say anything? It's just shock value sex humor for the A-plot. The B-plot is better than the A-plot, but it's still really not that interesting. It would go better with an episode that actually matched it, and not just some shitty episode they made for ratings. Before season 5, this took the crown as the episode that I felt had the least amount of effort put in. Not that writing an episode of Rick and Morty is easy, no, they put effort in, but they just didn't put any effort into actually making it good. They just wrote the most absurd thing they could think of without ever stopping to give it anything beyond that. It's shock value for shock value's sake.
Maybe don't tell your parents we did this.
I think this was the very first sign that Rick and Morty was going downhill, and I think it has the core issue that a lot of the episodes in this tier have, a lack of effort into giving it a reason to exist beyond being absurd. It has some good ideas. Rick getting trapped somewhere where science can't help him is genuinely a really cool idea, which is why it's so stupid that they immediately undo that and make him overpowered again. Because they're not interested in doing stuff that's cool. They just want to get to the dragon incest orgy. The B-plot isn't much better. It's not actively bad, it's just completely uninteresting. The only moment in this episode that's worthwhile, aside from—
That's the end of the Morty Gets a Dragon episode.
Are you gonna slay it?
First off, I always slay it, queen.
is the final scene with Rick, Jerry, and the cat. It's pretty funny and certainly one of the most memorable moments of the season.
But I got nowhere to
Get
go.
out! Get out! Get out!
Get out! Get out! But it's one good scene in a 22-minute slop fest, so this episode gets third worst. Number 88. Gotron Jerry Sis Rick Vangelion. This episode is a mess. It tries and fails at pretty much every single step. During the spaceship ride to Boob World, Rick discovers the final Gotron ferret he needs to complete his Gotron robot. Basically Voltron, but ferrets. Pretty easy to understand. This begins a scheme where Rick provides alternate Ricks with their own Gotrons if they agree to work with him and combine to make Go-Gotrons, and eventually Go-Go-Gotrons, and so on. The premise alone isn't the worst idea in the world. The idea that Rick would turn this into some giant pyramid scheme is a pretty funny idea. Where this episode goes wrong is, well, basically everywhere other than the basic idea. First, the episode is mostly focused around Morty and Summer, as Summer wins Rick's approval and Morty, desperately trying not to lose his place, tries to help but fails and gets demoted.
I ended up the left foot of the left foot. I guess because our robot didn't have an asshole.
This is an idea that's already had an episode based around it, all the way back in the season 2 premiere, and it doesn't even do anything interesting with it. It's literally the basic sitcom, main character gets lost in project and eventually turns on everyone until they have to begrudgingly save them. It's just so cliche, which is like the opposite of what Rick and Morty stands for. They have this song in the episode about how Western animation and Japanese animation are separate genres but are inspired by each other. But it feels so hollow when they go on to make fun of anime in an unnecessarily cruel feeling way, and the jokes aren't even original.
We mean in a more general cultural sense.
I don't even like anime that much, and I think their parody is shallow. It's funny, too, because the season finale has a much better anime parody, because it feels predicated on love for anime rather than distaste. The worst part about this episode is that it tries. And I know it tries, but it never succeeds. It never makes me care about the premise, the conflict. It's not that funny, nor is it ever emotional. It calls back to another terrible episode, and the only thing it ever makes me feel is, thank God I'm not watching the turkey episode. A lot of this episode's jokes feel recycled or extremely similar to things we've seen before. Not even the climax of this episode is original. The family saving Rick from a self-destructive project is reminiscent of the ending of Big Trouble in Little Sanchez when Morty and Summer save Rick from the body of Tiny Rick, the Unity episode where Summer and Morty try to tell him that he's losing himself, and the ending of Childrick of Mort where Morty and Summer save Rick from a space battle. Except this time Rick is in the spaceship and Morty and Summer are on the giant space creature, which is a callback to the incest baby plotline from the same season, 3 episodes prior to it. It's almost like they knew it was shit and was gonna get hate, but did it anyway to get ratings. Number 87. Wet Quat a Mortykin Summer. You know the episode is gonna be bad when it starts with a cold open that's just a stolen plotline from season 4. Summer and Morty fighting over Rick's invention for their own gain is basically exactly what happens in season 4's finale, with Summer and Morty fighting over the invisibility belt. But luckily, or actually unluckily, the episode abandons this plot quickly, only for Morty to become some sort of weird mutation on Summer's stomach called a Quado that can only say,
Open your mind.
apparently this is a reference to Total Recall, but unlike other episodes that have plotlines that rely on references, this isn't funny at all if you don't know what they're referencing. It just seems random and stupid. It leads to some dumb trading ring, and it's just another throw a bunch of bullshit at the audience episode, another with only a couple good gags in it. I like Rick being overly aggressive, that's about all I can really remember. A pretty bad 2-episode run for Season 7, with the Numericons episode right after this. Number 86. Rick Dependence Spray. If you don't find the idea of sentient cum funny, maybe skip this episode. This is probably the episode a lot of people expected to be ranked as the worst, but honestly, it has some good jokes in it, and it's at least not really boring.
Analyze its DNA and figure out what these beautiful creatures.
Oh, why? It had a gun!
Are you out of your mind bringing an armed sperm in here?
I mean, 86 out of 91 isn't exactly a flattering position, but it gets worse than this, as you've seen. It's still really bad, though. Even ignoring the sperm aspect, the Chuds, yes, that's the actual name of the underground horse species in this episode, are just such a stupid thing to make up out of nowhere. I mean, it's so obvious they needed a reason for Rick to get the horse semen to start the episode, so they just came up with some lazy bullshit. If the underground species of horses they were at war with was some non sequitur that had no payoff, it'd be kind of funny, but actually having the Chuds have a real presence in the episode, I don't know, it's just horrible. And the writers knew that, of course, they were just doing it for ratings. Do I even need to say more? It's just shock humor and nothing more. This episode also has some of the most blatant joke reuse I've seen in the show.
No need to panic, everyone. I have a simple solution. See you all in hell!
Gentlemen, there's a solution here you're not seeing.
Just Rick and Morty at peak, phoning it in. Let's move on. And with that, we've reached the end of our bottom tier of Rick and Morty episodes, with 3 Season 5 episodes, 2 Season 7 episodes, and 1 lonely little Season 4 episode. These are the worst of the worst, and a lot of them have the common theme of thinking that doing a bunch of random bullshit is how you make an interesting Rick and Morty episode. But that's really, really not how you do it. Clearly. Now, on to the next tier. Meh. These are episodes that I don't find much enjoyment in at all, but they aren't offensively bad. Number 85. A Mortykin Graffiti. This episode is so basic and boring. There's really nothing to this episode. Rick and Jerry episodes are usually good, but this one is just boring, and is a generic "we need to stop being so mean to Jerry" episode. It feels incredibly bland. The B-plot isn't anything special either, just Morty and Summer doing nothing interesting with Rick's car and some random cool kid named Bruce Chutback. Number 84. Morty Daddy. Another episode that feels like it adds nothing. I don't hate the A-plot with Morty and Morty Jr., but it's not really that entertaining. The B-plot also isn't awful, but it's nothing we haven't seen before from the show. Summer and Rick are doing thing, and Rick gets distracted only for Summer to out-Rick Rick. Oh, sorry, I wasn't describing the B-plot of Morty Daddy, I was describing the B-plot of A Rick Convenient Mort, which is already one of the more boring B-plots in the show, so why they're rehashing it here is beyond me. I don't know. I feel like I felt absolutely nothing from watching this episode. I didn't laugh even once, but I wasn't bored. It was entertaining enough. I can't even say I dislike it. It just exists to me. Number 83. Childrick of Mort. Plot-wise, this one's pretty meh. The only part that's worthwhile is when Rick and Beth develop the Society of Children. It has them bond more, which is the best part of the episode, and I like seeing them develop, but most of the episode is devoted to bullshit, like Jerry recruiting a bunch of rejected children to go camping with. Morty and Summer try to fly an alien ship and get high off alien tech. Rick fights a god who gives Jerry magic powers? On paper, this episode doesn't sound so bad. These are all ideas that could work theoretically, but they feel so cookie cutter. Oh, Rick and Beth do science things so they can bond like father and daughter. Jerry hangs out with shitty and lame things because no one likes him. Morty and Summer are teens, so Morty like video game and Summer like drug.
Sega Dreamcast?
It's all just so boring and uninspired. One of the episodes that's hardest to watch for me. It's really so boring. Number 82. Air Force Wong. Maybe this episode is a bit low, but honestly, this episode is so forgettable, I can't for the life of me justify putting it over literally any episode that I like, even slightly. The Return of Unity was kind of cool, but it also didn't really lead to anything at all. The president was there. I liked Rick's therapist immediately turning on him when she meets Unity. That's really all I can remember of this episode, and I've watched it multiple times. I don't know what to say about this episode. It's just there. Number 81. Cryomort a Rickfer. I was really excited for this episode. When they first revealed the storyboard for the cold open, I thought it was a really strong premise. Rick and Morty hiding amongst a society of spacefaring aliens who abandon their planet and have to pretend to be part of that species was an interesting idea that could have led to a lot of great moments, even if it is reminiscent of Among Us, which I'm pretty sure is an intentional illusion. Ironically though, my biggest problem with the episode is that it isn't similar enough to Among Us, with it basically abandoning that premise entirely halfway through the episode, with the rest dedicated to some stupid space race that was pretty boring and stilted, with zero reason to care about anything that happened during it. I also didn't like the idea of Rick being some rich kid and Morty having to be part of the oppressed crew member group. I thought it was stupid, and it would have been better if they were just one big group of people, though Rick being mistaken as a rich family's son is pretty funny. As this episode is though, its premise is just completely wasted.
That was Met Tier. Not that many episodes, actually the least in any singular tier. But that's not that surprising. I like the show, so obviously I would like most of the episodes. Now, on to OK Tier. These are episodes that are at least passable or have something to them.
Number 80. Mort Ragnarok. The stuff in Valhalla is boring, but the stuff with Bigfoot and the Pope is actually pretty funny. That's all I have to say. What more do you want? Do you think you could talk about this episode for a minute? I doubt it. Again, none of the episodes in this tier are awful, they just all are kind of boring or uninteresting in some way, and this episode is no different. Number 79. Valkyrik. Another mixed episode, like a lot of Season 8 episodes. This episode has some really funny jokes.
Gun also shoots a sign?
Yeah, for clarity, so people know it's quicksand and not a brown portal or diarrhea.
But doesn't the sign tip off the enemy?
No, the other side says ordinary sand.
My favorite has to be the Cisco bit, which probably is my favorite joke of the whole season. Or it would have been, but I think the post-credit scene showing Cisco kind of ruined the joke a little bit. Otherwise, this episode has Rick and Spacebeth, which is a fairly strong dynamic. It further explores their relationship, which is cool, and it does new, somewhat cool stuff with the Gromflamites and the Galactic Federation, but nothing that had me invested. The overly bureaucratic resistance bit got old really fast, and I didn't really like the new resistance at all. The main villain of the episode is incredibly unfunny too. No, Rick and Morty writers, rent-free in your head isn't funny. It almost felt like one of those Family Guy bits where they kept doing it even past when it gets unfunny to the point where it loops back around to being funny, but it didn't quite make it there. This episode is kinda all over the place. It's not the worst, but it's certainly not an episode that I'm gonna be revisiting anytime soon if I'm being honest. Other than maybe the Cisco scene, which is of course hilarious. Number 78. Interdimensional Cable 2, Tempting Fate. It might be surprising to see a Season 2 episode this far down, and maybe this is a little low for this episode, but I stand by it. This episode is really, really bad, by Season 2 standards, which means it's just kinda okay. It completely misunderstands why the first interdimensional cable was so good, has nowhere near the same emotional impact as the first, and is just in general a terrible follow-up to a, spoilers for this list, incredible episode of Rick and Morty. Maybe on paper this isn't as bad as some of the other episodes down here, although OK Tier honestly isn't all that bad. I think this episode deserves it because it's just disappointing and completely fails to live up to the original's greatness. It does have a lot of great jokes though, so that's why it's not that low. Number 77. Forgetting Sarek Mortshul, the first part of Rick and Morty's first and, to date, only two-parter. Unless you count the Season 1 finale and Season 2 premiere as being a two-parter, in which case, sure, whatever. This episode blows, mostly. The beginning is great, with Rick finally making good on his threat of replacing Morty, replacing him with 2 crows no less. But this is where the episode devolves, as Morty teams up with some dude named Nick as the Portal Boys, because they both have portals on them. They try and adventure without Rick, but Nick turns on Morty and he has to kill him. It doesn't sound bad, and it's not really bad per se, just uninteresting. It doesn't give us any background on Rick, as Nick is just some random guy he met one day, and for Morty, all he gets is another episode where he learns not to trust and to defend himself. Nick isn't really an interesting antagonist. He's just kinda evil for no good reason. And the other half of this episode has Rick adventuring with his 2 crows after being caught up in some dumb crow story. Rick's words, not mine. Somehow, his journey with the crows develops Rick so much that he's now capable of empathy and is a good person again? What? Okay, obviously he's not actually just a good person again, but it's wild that the thing that at least made him attempt to not be a giant dickhead is a couple of crows, and not the many adventures he's gone on with the family that he so obviously cares about. The episode ends with Rick just leaving to go adventure with the crows. Okay, this might be the most out of character Rick has ever been written. This episode sucks, man. Number 76. Full Meta Jack Rick.
This episode doesn't have much going for it. Narratively, it's all over the place, and is a lame follow-up to its predecessor, bringing the character of Storylord back only to tell a fairly lame story with him, while basically abandoning him for a lot of the episode, having Rick and Morty go through incredibly meta and self-aware nonsense before returning to fight Storylord with a lame ending. It's an okay tier though, only because it honestly has a lot of great gags. Like, I love the self-referential 6 and Brett Con.
His name is Brett Con. He has the power to make things always have been other things. I think that's called retconning, but his name is Brett Con. I think Brett's a name too. His name could be Rhett Con.
It is, and always has been.
The entire cold opening, including the theme song,
What planet is this? Cover your eyes on this part.
and a lot of the meta jokes.
Were those not there before? Guess there's been a continuity error.
The previously on segments are really good too.
It's just that the way that they get to that stuff is lame and contrived.
And yes, Season 6, Episode 7 is the episode Fortnite I'm Pregnant, It's Raining Meatballs is from.
Number 75. Ricker Than Fiction. I want to like this episode. I really do. I think it has a lot of strong components to it, but it also has a lot of unfunny bullshit. Maximum Velocitrees and the robot trees were kinda funny, I guess. I ended up liking Tannenbaum, but the rest of them didn't really feel like they had any sort of anything to them. The closest I could compare them to are the Vindicators, which, now that I mentioned it, is making people realize, hey, wait a minute, why isn't Vindicators 3 already on the list? But I'll get back to you on that. Anyway, they're not as memorable in any capacity as the Vindicators, who aren't even really that memorable in the first place, but are far more memorable than whatever these guys are. Regardless, there's a lot to like in this episode, but also a lot to dislike. I really hate the James Gunn and Zack Snyder stuff in this episode. It's not funny, and it's even less funny if you aren't chronically online enough to get it. I prefer this kind of ratings trap over the let's make a shitty episode with controversial material so people will talk about us ratings trap, but it's still not good. Otherwise, I like the plot, though it is slow to start. Once it gets going, it's pretty good. Number 74. How Poopy Got His Poop Back, a Mr. Poopy Butthole focused episode. Yay. I don't care about Mr. Poopy Butthole. He was good in his original episode and the end of season stingers, but beyond that, I just don't care about him or his relationship with his wife and baby. That being said, I do like the appearance of Rick's friends in this episode, and Gene is also really funny. Honestly, I think this episode starts going downhill once Hugh Jackman enters. Before that, I actually think it's quite funny and I like it a lot, but once we get to the Jack Shack and PB kidnapping his child and fighting a predator, I start to lose interest. The final scene outside the taco restaurant is really funny too. Also, I completely forgot Mr. Poopy Butthole got recast while I was watching this episode, and I don't think I actually noticed. So props to the voice actor. Number 73. Jurassic Mort. These okay tier episodes are really hard to write segments for because I'm just repeating myself over and over. Mostly boring episode with some good jokes, neat lore moment, blah blah blah, you don't care. This one has more good jokes than the ones before it, I guess. Makes sense considering it's higher on the list. Yeah. One of the least interesting Rick meets someone that matches or surpasses his intelligence level episodes, though I do like them spiting Rick at the end by sealing the interdimensional rift in the sky. Also, there's a reference to Will Smith slapping Chris Rock at the Oscars, I think?
That was all scripted?
Every moment at the Oscars is. Even that one thing.
Remember when that was relevant?
Another couple episodes and another tier gone. Now we move on to the episodes that I would actually consider good with good tier.
Number 72. Big Trouble in Little Sanchez. This honestly might be the biggest surprise of the video, but I'm not sure. The Rick plot in this episode is pretty boring. I never found Tiny Rick all that funny, and it's just overall a fairly uninteresting story for a Rick and Morty episode. The B plot with Beth and Jerry is a lot better, but not so much better that it carries the episode. It's a solid season 2 Beth and Jerry story about their marriage, back when that was something the series focused on, but still. I don't know, this one just never clicked for me. Neither plots are super interesting or funny. It kinda sucks that I dislike this episode considering it has the creator of Gravity Falls in it and the actor of the Dean from Community, Jim Rash. Two great guest stars for a mid-episode.
Oh, but don't worry. I'll get my Jim Rash fill in the new hit show, President Curtis. Really good stuff in that show. For context, the pilot, which is the only episode I watched, probably would have gone somewhere in meh tier. But anyway, I really only have one thing to say.
This episode needs to get its shit together.
All your shit, so it's together.
Number 71. The Jarek Trap.
Get your shit together!
When compared to other Rick and Jerry episodes, it's easy to see why this one falls short. Rather than follow Rick and Jerry, a tested dynamic that has been proven can work in multiple episodes, we follow Burger and Fries, two characters that are just boring. The first half of the episode is actually not bad. I like their dynamic at the start, but once they actually like each other, it just gets really boring. There's not really much in this episode to like. The mafia boss guy is kind of funny sometimes, I guess.
Also, everything's flammable!
I don't know. Next episode. Number 70. Jairbud. Of course, every modern Rick and Morty season has to have an episode centered around a random one-off character from season 1 and 2. I guess in this case it's slightly more forgivable, since the original episode was a pseudo-backdoor pilot that was rejected by Adult Swim. Regardless, the plot surrounding the dog world isn't the most interesting, but it has some good jokes in it. Where this episode shines is with its Jerry B plot, of him taking anxiety-eating parasites that make him a bit too confident, and the rest of the family, sans Morty, scramble to find the cure to the worms. Overconfident Jerry is an absolute blast, such a great character. And the characters he's paired with are hilarious too. The B plot absolutely saves this episode from being a lot lower, it's that good. Number 69. Anatomy Park. I don't find either of the plots in this episode particularly interesting. The titular Anatomy Park isn't that interesting, and the only memorable character in the episode is Dr. Xenon Bloom. The B-plot of Jerry's polyamorous parents is also just boring. It's not really that funny, I don't know. Is there anything else to say? Number 68. The ABCs of Beth. Yet another episode that's just kind of boring. We learn about Beth's childhood more, and I like that a lot. It's just that that's pretty much all this episode provides. Beth gets development, and I get bored to death. Okay, it's really not that bad, but it's not that good either. The A-plot of Rick and Beth going to Froopy Land to rescue an old friend is a cool idea, but they don't really do much with it at all, aside from shock value incest cannibalism. The B-plot is about Jerry dating some space alien thing, and that plot is just boring through and through. Jerry being too much of a coward to break it off properly, coming back to bite him, is a really good writing choice though. I like it as a part of season 3, but as an individual episode, it's pretty weak overall. It has interesting Beth moments, and is the beginning of the Space Beth stuff, so it's not all bad, it's just mostly boring.
Whatever you say, Stone Cold Steve Austin. I don't know why I just said that. Doesn't make a lot of sense, but gotta stand by it. Whatever you say, Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Number 67. Rictional Mortpoon's Rickmas Mortcation. Well folks, we made it. Oh my god. Well folks, we made it. The lowest season finale on this list. This is just a lame finale, especially compared to a certain other finale that heavily features President Curtis as the antagonist. You're probably tired of me saying this at this point, but it's really not bad, just not great by any means. I like the perfectly vertical lightsaber joke. I like Rick replacing himself with a robot. But the joke of Robot Rick trying to get everyone to figure out that he's a robot and kill him got old pretty quickly. President Curtis is always a delight in this show, probably why they're giving him his own show. And I like him here, I just wish the plot was at all interesting, or climactic for the season. All this really has going for it is the reveal that Rick was a robot for most of the previous episode, and that he's back to obsessively hunting Rick Prime. Other than that, a fairly run-of-the-mill Rick and Morty episode, which is disappointing for a finale. Number 66. Starmort, Return of Jedi. Another finale all the way down here. In good, so not bad, but still. We finally get the payoff to Beth cloning herself in Space Beth, a character who gets progressively better the more times she appears, which means this appearance is... yeah, she's basically just a female young Rick here. I don't dislike her in this episode, but we're also not really given a reason to like her that much. There's an ongoing joke of everyone forgetting her name. That's something, I guess. My main problem with this episode is that it kind of just feels like fan service. I know a lot of finales tend to feel that way, but I don't know. It's so straightforward with its payoffs to earlier plot lines that it kind of feels like the Rick and Morty ending we saw in the Story Train episode. The episode just doesn't really feel like it has that Rick and Morty twist in it, but I don't know, I still like it.
Everybody drop your guns, except for Jerry. Fucking classic.
Summer and Morty also have a plot line in this episode. Number 65. The Old Man in the Seat. Originally, I had this episode much higher on this list, but I realized that I had it there purely because of the C-plot of Rick in his toilet, which they clearly knew was the best part of the episode because it's what the episode is named after, but didn't have the foresight to know that the A and B plots would be incredibly boring and uninteresting, with literally nothing to like about them. All of the funny moments are in Rick's story. There's truly nothing to the others, which are so forgettable. I bet you forgot what they even were until I told you. If the 5 minutes with Rick in this episode were trimmed out, this would almost certainly be in the bottom 10, but luckily it's there, so it's only 65th. Number 64. The Last Temptation of Jerry. This episode is purely carried by how funny I thought it was. The plot is borderline nonsensical, but it just had me laughing basically the whole time. When the Christian guys were first introduced, they were kind of annoying, but by the end I found them pretty funny, especially the guy who refused to die and kept showing up everywhere. Solid bit. I don't know. I know people don't like this one, but I just can't dislike it because I thought it was so dumb it was funny. Number 63. Raising Gazorpazorp. A perfect example of an average Season 1 episode. Neither of its plots are anything to write home about, but they've just got a lot of funny bits. Not enough to propel it higher on this list, but enough to make me like it. I don't really know what else to say. It's good. Number 62. The Rick, the Mort, and the Ugly. I don't like this one as much as other people, I'll be honest. I don't know. It always just felt rushed to me. I never really got attached to these characters or their world. Somehow, despite them all getting more screen time, I care less about these characters than the ones in the Reclantis mix-up. That being said, it still is a good episode, with a pretty good story, just one that I wish could have somehow been given more screen time, despite the lack of proper cold open or even the intro. I can see why a lot of people really like this one, it just didn't quite click with me. I wish they'd do more stuff with the concept of alternate Rick and Mortys that doesn't have anything to do with the Citadel. Something like the Jerry Baree. I hope this is the last Citadel related episode, because after this one, the concept is just going to get tired, if it wasn't already. Number 61. Rick Mirai Jack. This episode would probably be a bit higher if Rick wasn't undercutting every dramatic scene to tell the audience how stupid he finds the idea of telling a story.
Whoa, dead wife?
Yes, now everyone can shut up about it.
This was really in the peak of the era of Rick and Morty, where they thought that the way to properly write a story was to have the main character constantly talk about how dumb it was that there's a story being told and that there's people that care about that story. I never thought it was the writer's perspective leaking in through Rick, but it got pretty annoying for Rick to constantly pull us out of our immersion in the story to tell us we're stupid for being immersed. Regardless, this episode actually has a lot of strong moments, most notably us seeing Rick's backstory, and the scene of Evil Morty leaving the central finite curve. The orchestral rendition of Evil Morty's theme is one of my favorite pieces of music from the show. Actually, the music that plays during Rick's backstory is too. But all of the good parts of the episode are in the last 7 minutes. Overall, I can't really justify putting this any higher than it is. It just kind of has that Season 5 stank to it. Number 60. Rick Mancing the Stone. Another episode that's kind of half good, half mid. I like Summer and Morty's plot with their reactions to their parents' divorce coming out in the Mad Max world. The problem is, I find the Mad Max world incredibly boring. I've never seen any Mad Max movies, but I doubt that it would enhance my enjoyment at all. Also, does anyone else find it weird that the Mad Max world randomly becomes medieval for 10 seconds? It's an orange wasteland and they go to the ruins of an old city, but then Morty's arm targets some sort of knight who lives in a castle? It's a confused world. I don't know. Is that in Mad Max? Like I said, I haven't seen it, so I don't know. It probably is. The Morty and Summer robots are really funny though.
Don't even trip, dog.
Number 59. Rick Fu Hustle. The A-plot here is a little bland, but by God, the B-plot is so funny. Most insane scene this season was Jerry fucking the pool bot, and that's saying a lot. This season had some crazy scenes. I can't even show it. That's how obscene it is. I do still like the A-plot too. It's not the most interesting, but it's solidly funny, and definitely has its moments. The B-plot definitely overshadows it though. Number 58. A Rick and King Mortar's Mort. I find all of the scenes on the sun hilarious, hands down, great. Once the Knights of the Sun arrive on Earth, and especially after they disband, this episode kind of falls apart. The interplanetary war is pretty boring and it's a pretty nothing burger part of the episode and is super forgettable. However, once they get back to the sun, it becomes really funny again. And then they do the vat of acid again. Watching that was the hardest I'd laughed at Rick and Morty in a long time. Maybe this episode is carried by that one joke, but I don't care, it's funny. Number 57. The Curixis Case of Bethjamin Button. I really like the plot with the two Beths turning back into chaotic, violent kids. It's a great exploration of Beth's character, and it was a lot of fun seeing the havoc she wreaked. mostly on Gene. The Earthworld B-plot kinda shits the bed though, mostly being about Rick, Summer, and Jerry investigating what happened to some guy I don't care about. The Morty plot, with him being fetishized by an alien, is kinda funny, but also just okay. It would probably be in the next tier if not for the B-plot. Also, it's weird how they make such a big deal of Morty disguising himself as a mascot, only for it to literally not matter because they were already getting chased, and then he takes it off like 10 seconds later.
That's all for good tier. Solid amount of episodes, but now we move on to episodes that actually, have a little something to them. On to really good tier.
Number 56. Rick's Days, 7 Nights. I know everyone loves this episode, but to me it rings slightly hollow. It suffers from the same issue as a lot of the recent Rick and Morty episodes in this vein have suffered from, and I can't quite put my finger on what it is, but it leads to a lack of investment in the characters introduced. Like, on paper, Ted and his journey in this episode are really cool and well written, but it just doesn't hit for me. The ending does, to be fair. That scene of Ted becoming Rick is really well done, but still doesn't quite reach the same heights as other similar episode endings. I don't know. I like the episode. It's definitely still good, it's just not my favorite. Number 55. That's Amorte. This might surprise some people, seeing the episode this low, but I don't know, it's not that good. It has its moments comedically, sure, but it's a fairly by-the-books Rick and Morty adventure. A lot of people felt that this was a solid return to a more classic-style adventure, but that's kinda my main problem. It feels like the episode's entire genesis was the writers asking themselves how they can make another classic-style episode. It almost feels randomly generated. Morty has a moral outrage because Rick is doing something questionable. Again, it's just conceptually lazy, in my opinion. The idea of people that turn into spaghetti when they kill themselves is so dumb. I know that's probably the point, but it's just so obvious that the writers needed something for Morty to get upset about, and we're like, I don't know, people turn into spaghetti when they die. Dumb. It also has probably the least impactful of Rick and Morty's many dialogue-free montage sequences. With all that being said, yeah, it's still solid. I know I just spent a minute talking about what I dislike about it, but that's really just me explaining why I have it low compared to other people's lists, where it's among the upper echelon of episodes, which I just can't understand. It's solid and has plenty to like. Hell, I like it, but it's in no way anywhere near the top. Number 54. Mortyplicity. Another episode with a cool premise with fine execution. Rick making decoys who then make decoys who make decoys, and so on, is a good concept, but also, I just don't think it's something Rick would do. It doesn't seem like him to essentially clone himself and his family, then just leave them unsupervised. He's smarter than that. There is a lot to like in this episode though, but this episode's not particularly funny or unfunny, or boring or exciting. It's a fairly run-of-the-mill Rick and Morty adventure. Number 53. A Ricker Runs Through It. I had quite high expectations for this one based on the promotional material, and while it didn't quite meet my expectations, it's still a solid episode. The first half is a bit rocky, but once we get to Morty in the sub-basement with Reese and Rick getting hacked, it becomes great. I honestly wish Rick's tech being hacked and him having no implants was the whole episode. I really think Rick with no implants and tech is a fairly untapped well. Again though, like other episodes around this, though I have complaints, I still do like the episode and think it's solidly funny too. Number 52. Lawnmower Dog. This episode is pretty good. I like the B-plot of Rick and Morty going deeper and deeper into dreams. It's a lot more interesting than the A-plot of the dog uprising. I never found that plot to be that funny or good, at least until Rick and Morty come back, then it picks back up. I like Scary Terry a lot. All of the sequences with him are really funny.
Don't even trip, dog!
But honestly, I never found Snowball that funny. I don't know why.
Where are my testicles, Summer?
And structurally, this episode is kind of weird, and the ending kind of feels like it comes out of nowhere. You can tell that the writers were still trying to figure out how to properly write a Rick and Morty episode. Still though, the episode is really funny and I do like it.
Don't even trip, dog.
Number 51. Something Ricked This Way Comes. Another classic season 1 episode with an A-plot that's okay and a B-plot that's really good. Although this time the B-plot gets a lot less screen time. Though I like the devil stuff more than the dream stuff, but the Pluto stuff less than the dog stuff, so they cancel out and get placed right next to each other. Almost everything I said about the previous episode still applies here. It's also really funny and I also like it. Number 50. Analyze Piss. This episode is actually
really good, especially the scene in Pissmaster's house. It's a pretty solid emotional beat. Rick's jealousy of Jerry being accepted as a hero for one defeat while he defeats these guys all the time is an interesting thing to explore. Rick taking up the mantle of Pissmaster is both a selfish and unselfish act. He seemingly does it for Pissmaster's daughter, not wanting her to believe that her dad was a bad guy, but really? He's doing it for himself more than anything. It's clear Rick was jealous of Jerry and the love he was getting from the family and from the general population, so him becoming a hero was a way for him to get the admiration that he wants, while also maintaining anonymity so his dignity and ego aren't broken, since Rick believes he's above it. It's actually a pretty solid character study on Rick, and writing this analysis for the script legitimately moved it up into this tier. I'm not joking. Maybe I'm overanalyzing the funny haha piss episode, but the title is literally Analyze Piss. They're inviting me to do it. Number 49. A Rick Convenient Mort. The A-plot in this episode is so good that it pisses me off that the B-plot is so mid. It's a decent enough Rick and Summer adventure, but it's not really anything of note. The A-plot, though, is just a fantastically done tragic love story between Morty and this Captain Planet ripoff that has apparently existed on Earth the whole time, and it's actually really well done. The ending always hits me so hard, and the music in the episode is phenomenal. It's a little bit of tonal whiplash, and I don't think it sticks the landing perfectly, but it is enough to land, emotionally speaking. I just wish it wasn't connected to one of the most sauceless B-plots ever. Number 48. Pilot. Ah, the Rick and Morty pilot. Truly a classic. Well, aside from this scene. Other than that though, it's a really funny episode, and it's very obvious to see why this was picked up into a full show. It's definitely rough around the edges, especially compared to episodes from later seasons, but it holds up surprisingly well. Rick and Morty's dynamic is solid from the get-go. The humor had basically already found its footing. The animation is maybe the best the show has ever looked. I really love the loose hand-drawn style. Yeah, the art gets a lot cleaner, but this style really fits the show, especially back when it was more improvisational. Overall, an incredibly strong start for Rick and Morty that perfectly introduces you to its world. Number 47. Mort Gully, The Last Rick Forest. Truly one of the more creative Rick and Morty episodes, being about Rick and Morty speedrunning different evolutionary paths in order to escape a prison. It has some really cool sequences exploring life and evolution. It's a lot of fun and plays with some really interesting concepts, which I think is what really carries the episode. The actual overall plot of the episode is a little lacking, especially the climax, but it's just so cool, man, so I can respect that conceptual aspect of it. I mean, how can you not like Rick and Morty Amoeba? It's awesome. Number 46. One Crew of the Cuckoo's Morty. Another contender for worst Rick and Morty episode title, and another really odd episode. I don't really know what to say for this one. I can't really think of anything about it I explicitly dislike, but I can't for the life of me place it any higher than it is. It's just good, I guess. I don't know what to say. But if there's any actual fans of this episode, please comment and let me know, because I sincerely doubt that any actually exist, unless of course you're an Elon Tusk diehard. Speaking of that cameo, I don't really understand why people get so up in arms about it in this episode specifically. Like, he literally already appeared in the show, in the post-credit scene of Something Ricked This Way Comes. Fake-ass fans.
I think this was a powerful lesson in the dangers of AI.
I think this episode has a lot of good bits, it's just nothing special. I guess it has that one quote that everyone loves.
Your boos mean nothing, I've seen what makes you cheer.
Number 45. Field of Dreams. I know a lot of people really love this finale, and it is great, but to me, it doesn't live up to other recent Rick and Morty finales. I really don't know what it is. I think the plot is really good, but for some reason, it just doesn't hit for me like it seems to for, like, literally everyone else. I don't dislike anything about this episode. It just doesn't excel at anything for me in particular. I like MIT Rick, but I feel like his fall is a little fast. I get what they were going for with the portal gun destroying Rick's life in every dimension, and Morty being infected with Rick's poison, which only fuels MIT Rick's fall from normalcy. But it all just feels a bit too fast for me. It doesn't help that this is really similar to the TED episode with yet another reference to the first scene of the pilot. That's probably why this fell a little flat for me. It felt like territory that was already partially explored via the TED episode, even if I do ultimately prefer this one. I don't know. Don't get mad at me if you really like this one, because there's so many good episodes that some have to be lower than others. Number 44. Rixie Business.
This is a nice, more chilled out Rick and Morty episode. Just a classic, we gotta make sure this party doesn't get us grounded plot, but with Morty being the only one that actually cares. Plus, it's got the twist of the house being teleported into space, so, you know, that's something. It's nice to get to see the characters basically just stand around and chill for once. Also, we get introduced to Rick's friends, all of whom are really funny and great. Overall, this episode just has a bunch of great characters and aliens, as well as great character interactions. I love Bird Person, Tammy, Gearhead, Aberdolf Linkler, this random kid with the bowl cut. Just a lot of great characters. The B-plot with Beth and Jerry isn't quite as good, but it's still solid and doesn't detract from the episode in any way. Number 43. Mort Dinner Rick Andre. Mr. Nimbus is not funny. I'm sorry, most of the time he's really not funny. He really seems like a lame attempt at recapturing that Justin Roiland humor of, I'm Mr. Blank, I do these things, I'm a wacky crazy character. He's not all bad. I like the one scene of Rick going,
Don't fucking establish canonical backstory with me.
I like that he controls the police. I don't know.
He controls police, Jerry.
Right, that tracks. In Dumb World.
To talk about the actual meat of this episode though, I think it's a pretty good concept. Morty becoming essentially the Antichrist to generations of citizens is really funny. Why is it this low? I don't know. It's not that good. Number 42. Salute Your Morts. Morty and Summer trapped in a no-adults endless party camp is okay. It's not my favorite plot of the season, but it works. What makes this episode so good is the B-plot of Beth and Jerry, and eventually Rick, getting high on a forever high joint and going on a journey to find a cure. It's just really funny seeing the shenanigans they get up to while they're high. My favorite scene has to be the scene where Rick portals to the other side of his portal.
Do you feel different?
I don't know.
The scene where Rick distracts the guards by fighting them while too high to know what's going on is also really funny. I also really love Beth and Jerry complaining that Space Beth doesn't throuple them anymore.
Why don't you fuck us anymore?
Yeah, we had a good thing going.
It's a really funny B-plot that absolutely carries the episode. Number 41. Get Schwifty. This has got to be one of the most iconic Rick and Morty episodes, up there with Pickle Rick and Me Seeks and Destroy. With that being said, it's really not that amazing of an episode. It's not bad by any means. It's just kind of an average Rick and Morty episode. Average by the standards of the first 3 seasons, so still really funny throughout. It's our introduction to President Curtis, who's a pretty great recurring side character. It also has Ice-T, who inexplicably turns into an icicle, which is a pretty funny bit, which is of course ruined by the existence of it having a follow-up, but I'm not judging this episode based on that. The plot is fine, it works, but it's not particularly engaging or interesting. The B-plot is pretty good too. I liked it. That's really my only note. Please write more. Number 40. Requiem Mort a Dream. This may be the second Rick and Morty Season 9 episode to explore brain-altering parasites being willingly overdosed on, but it is definitely the superior one. I don't think I completely understand the way the empathy parasite works, but it doesn't matter, because the ride of this episode is crazy. It really leaves you wondering what's actually going on outside of Morty's perspective, which makes the scene in the mall hit that much harder. The episode's B-plot is also really good. The serial killer character was hilarious, and Jerry improvising his calling card was really funny too. A B-plot about a serial killer is kind of perfect to go alongside an episode focused around empathy. I also really like Rick and Morty swapping their dynamic like that. I'm surprised they hadn't really done that yet. It seems so obvious. Evil Morty doesn't count. Neither does Doofus Rick. Number 39. Edge of Tomorty. Rick, Die, Repeat. This is another episode that sounds really good on paper, but the premise is mostly wasted. Rick dying and Morty refusing to revive him, with a hologram Rick harassing him the whole time, is a great idea, and the B-plot with Rick dying over and over again and being rerouted to alternate dimensions Rick's Operation Phoenixes is even better. I just think Morty's plot with the death crystals is not that compelling. On paper it sounds interesting, but in execution it's not. A pretty common theme for these middle season episodes, but hey, at least we got Teddy Bear Nazi Rick.
This too fascistish?
Nope.
Funniest bit of the episode. The B-plot honestly completely outshines the A-plot for me, and delivers most of the episode's best jokes.
But you are down with fascist dystopias, right? Yes. That yes was pretty liberal with the letter Y.
Also, the end of the A-plot is just completely out of nowhere and makes no sense. Number 38. Rattlestar Rick Lactica. This might be the most average Rick and Morty episode. There's nothing really that bad about it, but it also doesn't have anything that makes it stand out to me. It's decently funny, it's got a neat plot with fresh ideas, a pretty funny B-plot, and yet, I don't really feel much from it. The snake jazz is pretty funny. I don't know, do people like this episode? Do they hate it? I have no idea. Based on that, it probably doesn't sound like it fits in really good tier, but I do like it. When I watch it, I have a good time, I just think it's pretty forgettable. Number 37. A Rickerhead. Season 9 really brought some bangers. I mean, can you really beat a scene where Rick literally makes a deal with himself to suck his own dick? I certainly can't. The journey to reunite Rick's head with his body was fun, and the whole war between Head Rick and Body Rick was great. And it interweaves with this season's overall theme of Rick's depression and self-destructive behavior, with his body not wanting to put up with the abuse anymore. Just a really good episode through and through. Number 36. No Mortland. Another episode that has a great premise and strong writing that kinda loses me by the end, but is otherwise pretty good. I like the premise of Jerry's that wander the multiverse, and I like Mooch and our Jerry, Eagleman, quite a lot. It's got a great montage, which then gets repeated later with the song sped up, which is really funny for some reason. I like a lot of the ways that they get around different universes, it's really creative. I also really like Rick's writing and vocal performance here. Maybe my favorite Rick performance with the new voice actors, but I don't know.
Jerry, I'm still angry at you for talking to me.
Most of the episode is really good, but honestly, I didn't really like Grand Central. We've seen a group of alternate dimension versions of the same person create a secret society that the protagonists have to fight multiple times already. And already once this season. Sorry, I just didn't like the Grand Central guys as the antagonists.
It's not my favorite place.
I thought the whole group was a bit too similar to the Citadel, and especially the new Citadel we just saw established 5 episodes prior. I'm just kinda tired on that whole concept, I think. Still, a lot of the episode is really strong, it just doesn't have that thread that pulls everything together perfectly. Also, is it just me, or was this episode loosely based off of Doofus Jerry from the comics? That's the last of really good tier. The tier with the most amount of episodes, fun fact. And now, we're on to the episodes that I consider great. They lack glaring flaws, but also generally aren't so transcendent that they become one of my favorites. Number 35. There's Something About Morty. Season 9 starts off with a really great episode featuring Evil Morty. It contains some pretty insane fight scenes with incredible animation, and some pretty funny gags in there, like Rick's Looney Tunes-ass reassembly process. I do feel like the Mortys are slightly out of character here though. Evil Morty especially feels different from the previous appearances of his character, with him clearly having much more of an attachment to C-137 than before. He's a lot cockier and more aggressive towards Morty, and Morty himself is also a lot more aggressive towards Evil Morty. He wasn't especially fond of him previously, but never to this degree. It seemed like he only really hated him because Rick didn't like him, but was overall okay with being friendly with him, as would be expected from Morty's character. Hear me out on this. How much more interesting would it be if instead of Rick going on secret adventures with Evil Morty, it was Morty himself, with Rick being the one to get jealous at someone else taking Morty out on adventures? That would be a lot more in line with their characters. I feel like Evil Morty would be a lot more willing to be friendly with Morty, as useful as Rick could be to him, but whatever. Fanfiction aside, this episode is great, and the slight mischaracterization is forgivable because it leads to a great episode. I love Rick putting the Omega device blueprints in the Omega device. Insanely funny conclusion to that mini story thread. Number 34. Autoerotic Assimilation. I feel like a lot of people overrate this episode based purely on its ending. Yes, the ending is great, and it's so good that it makes the meh B-plot worth it solely for the payoff of Jerry needing the weed whacker. So yeah, it's a great ending, but the episode overall is kinda average for season 2 standards. Like, yeah, it's pretty funny, but it never sticks out in my mind as a particularly funny episode. There's so many other episodes that have more memorable and funnier jokes, combined with a plot that, while not bad, isn't the most interesting in the world. I want to make it abundantly clear that I don't really think this episode is bad in any way, I just don't think it's quite as good as the rest of the episodes on the list. I feel like the number makes that pretty clear, but I know that me not praising it will probably lead to people going off in the comments about how I hate it. Anyway, let's just move on. Number 33. Rest and Ricklaxation. This is an instant classic episode. Rick and Morty having their negative traits removed and put into separate characters is a genius idea. I love that healthy Rick and Morty's color palettes are slightly brighter than normal. It's a subtle detail, but it adds a lot to the episode. I didn't even notice at first because their colors in this episode are actually pretty similar to the way the show was colored back in season 1. I love Toxic Rick a lot. He's really funny, and Rick considering his attachment to Morty toxic is pretty funny. Honestly though, I find Morty's characterization in this episode to be the most interesting aspect. Morty finding his morality toxic is incredibly interesting, and I have to imagine the only reason he would think that is from Rick basically drilling it into Morty's head that morality is useless. The most interesting part has to be that final scene in Morty's new apartment, where he clearly purposefully doesn't hang up the call from Jessica so that Rick is able to track him down and give him his toxins back. It's a great ending. It's interesting to try and analyze why he did this, and I have to imagine that somewhere, deep down inside him, the true Morty was depressed in his new life, but too repressed for healthy Morty to ever admit it to himself. It's a really interesting conclusion for the episode. Plus, there's the foreshadowing for Rick and his obsession with Voltron robots.
You can't keep the drones. They turn into a little Voltron robot. They're awesome. You can't keep the drones.
Good thing they never tried to make a whole episode about that. I have to imagine that Rick has a special interest in Voltron robots, because we know he is canonically autistic, and he does have a weird fondness for them, being incredibly upset that Morty even suggested that he'd give the drones away. That's my headcanon at least. I also really love the random woman Morty picks up from the restaurant after Jessica leaves. The fact that she doesn't even give a shit that Morty is a child, and then somehow gets turned on by Rick and Morty fighting is just really hilarious.
Is it wrong if I think this is kind of hot?
We stan a problematic queen. Number 32, Night Family. Another solid episode, and I really like how they try something new here. I really like the horror vibe that they went for. It helps this episode stand out compared to the episodes that we'd been getting for the past few seasons. The episode's concept is cool. I really like seeing the different things the characters use their night people for. Rick and Morty getting abs is, for some reason, such a funny running gag in this episode, with them somehow getting an entire podcast career based purely on the fact that they're ripped.
And they come in all sorts of styles. Neon, plaid, orange. I even got a pair with that little, the raccoon man from that one movie printed on it. Chewbacca.
The scene where they scrape the old food into Rick's mouth might be the grossest scene in the entire show, and it actually made me gag when I watched it. The car chase sequence in the middle of the episode is pretty engaging, with a fun gimmick of the family members falling asleep and waking up in different ways. It's a really fun sequence. The music sting that happens whenever someone falls asleep or wakes up is a really good touch, too. Also, I like that Jerry's friendship with Night Jerry is ultimately what saves them, even after the family makes fun of Jerry for it. This is a great example of why Season 6 is one of my favorite seasons, and a great episode overall. Number 31. Look Who's Purging Now. This is another episode that doesn't really have anything wrong with it, I just don't like it as much as other episodes. What this episode has, however, is a lot of hilarious jokes, and in a season full of episodes with hilarious jokes, I think the Tatty Mason bit might be the funniest part of the entire season to me.
Tatty? Yes, Jerry, it's Tatty, a person no one's ever heard of until now calling you on a space phone.
I can't tell if you're being sarcastic.
Something about the way Morty says,
"Why are you with Tatty Mason?"
Holy shit, Dad, shut the fuck up!
is just so fucking hilarious. Plus, the post-credit scene revealing who Tatty Mason is also really funny, and adds to the joke. Unlike the Cisco bit from Season 8, the action, especially at the end, gets a bit gratuitous and uninteresting for me, but it still throws in some jokes, so I don't mind it. Overall, a great, hilarious episode.
You like that? You want me to cut to 3 weeks earlier when you were alive?
Number 30. Bethic Twinstinct. I will never understand why this episode got hate. Okay, I do, actually, because this was in the height of the Rick and Morty incest jokes, and a self-cest episode is just controversial enough for it to be lumped in, but like, self-cest isn't even bad, so it's a moot point. This episode's plot isn't like, super incredibly interesting, which is why it's not higher, but I really like the Beths together. I think their chemistry is natural, and it's totally in character for Beth to do this. It's a genuinely interesting exploration of the Beths, and even Jerry, as characters. It kinda drags in the middle a bit, but the scene at the end at the dinner table is hilarious. And overall, this episode has a ton of great jokes in it.
Your moms went to space. Did you even thank them for doing it?
I don't think it's amazing, but it has earned its place in this tier. I genuinely like it a lot. Number 29. Recturnal Friendshine of the Spotless Mort. These episode titles, man. This is a pretty cool episode. I really love this exploration of Rick's backstory. It kind of makes me wish we didn't just get to see basically everything 2 episodes later, but whatever. We also get Memory Rick, who is easily an all-time Rick and Morty character. Most of the episode is great, though I feel like the end of the episode is kind of slow, but it's nothing too major. I just start getting a little bored once Rick finally confronts Bird Person. Overall though, it's a great lore-focused episode. I don't know if you've been keeping track, but that's the last Season 5 episode. I've talked about them all. Season 5 barely made it into the top 30. Number 28, Solarix. Coming right off the heels of Season 5's ending, we get this episode, which blows the finale out of the water.
Been drinking a lot. Morty, I told you to write this down. I don't have a helmet like that Avengers guy did. Been drinking a lot of my piss.
It actually takes its serialized elements seriously, without the need for Rick to chime in and undercut everything. It's also just a really cool idea, with all portal travelers being sent back to their home dimensions, which includes Jerry because of the Jerry Beret.
Oh, the Jerry Beret! Deep cuts.
We also learn that Morty is the grandson of the Rick that killed C-137's wife, as well as all of the Dianes across the multiverse. That was an unexpected twist and is a really, really cool detail. Plus, with Morty returning to his home dimension, we get to see the Cronenberg world from Season 1 again, and we meet the coolest version of Jerry in the multiverse. Well, aside from Eagle Man.
Eagle Man!
On top of all that, we see Rick's original dimension, and all of the fucked up shit he did to torture himself. There's also a plot with Summer and the 2 Beths, with the main Beth insecure about her coolness, but it doesn't really do anything for me, but it's fine because it lasts like 2 seconds. Rick Prime is also really funny here.
It might be me, but like a saw thing. I'm very sneaky. Here's a bunch of killbots to deal with while you wrestle with that.
Overall, a really cool episode with a lot of great ideas and reveals. Number 27, The Wedding Squanchers. I feel like this episode being this low might be a bit controversial. I don't really know, but hey, it's my opinion. It's a great finale, and I like how it's basically a follow-up to the last season's finale, directly following up Bird Person's subplot with Tammy. I like Rick's cast of friends a lot, so seeing them again here is really cool. Also, the reveal that Tammy is a Federation agent is really unexpected and a cool twist. I love the 3 different planets, especially Tiny Planet, and the ending is of course great. A really solid episode, just not one that I love. But it's really funny and pretty interesting narrative-wise. I like the plot developments, Rick turning himself in, all that, so I don't really know what this episode is missing. I just don't feel that strongly about it. Number 26, Primordius. I really like this episode. It has a pretty interesting format, spending a large chunk of the episode in flashback, and it works really well for the most part. It also might be the funniest Season 4 episode, with just a ton of hilarious jokes throughout, like the 9/11 Pearl Harbor bit or the post-credits scene.
Summer, I want to fuck your dad. Oh, really?
I feel like this is one of the very few episodes at this point in the show's run that genuinely feels like it could have fit in Season 2. I don't think the plot is the best thing the show's written, but its format is really unique and it leads to a lot of funny jokes, so I don't really care. Number 25, Summer of All Fears. An incredibly strong premiere for Season 8, with a hilarious cold open and great unique premise. Rick putting Morty and Summer into a matrix because they took his phone charger, but then falling asleep and leaving them in there for too long is so in character it's hilarious. I really enjoy both Morty and Summer post-Matrix, and I think that it's a really cool exploration of their characters. I really love Summer's voice actress's performance in this episode. It might be my favorite Summer appearance in the whole show, and most of that is due to her incredible performance. Summer being an obnoxious girl boss middle-aged woman is really funny. Morty being a traumatized war vet is great too, and his relationship with Rick is nice, only for Morty to betray him, of course. The climax could use some work though. I think it falls a bit flat emotionally, and the stakes with the nuclear site feel a bit shoehorned in, especially after the climax is resolved and the meltdown just starts happening anyway. Other than that though, it's a great episode. Number 24, Morty's Mind Blowers. See, this is much better than doing Interdimensional Cable again. Hear that, Season 2, Episode 8? This episode is kind of a psychological horror episode, as we see all the memories that traumatized Morty, but then we also learn that Rick removes memories that he personally doesn't like.
We shouldn't take things for granted. Are you saying granite? Well, yeah, it's granted!
And the whole thing escalates with them both losing their memories and relearning who they are through all these awful memories. It's a really great premise, and I love all the memories, even if they are kind of just glorified Family Guy cutaways. It's a really well done alternative for the Interdimensional Cable episodes, still being an anthology, but not trying to recapture lightning in a bottle. And the ending with Summer executing a contingency for this exact situation is really funny too. All around great. Number 23. Rick fending your mort. This episode is hilarious. It's hard to summarize because it's mostly just cutaways, but the cutaways are really, really funny. It's easily the hardest I'd laughed at a Rick and Morty episode in quite a long time, and rewatching it for this video, I was laughing yet again. It's got a pretty basic plot, but it's all the episode needs to deliver hilarious joke after hilarious joke.
Why don't you tee up this clip of me kicking your ass?
There might be a couple misses, but for the most part, it's just banger after banger. The voice of the observers are also really funny. Especially that first one.
Sidewalk's public property, bro. I can observe all I want from here.
The court scene is hilarious through and through, and I find it really funny how the lawyer just ends up playing clips that make Rick and Morty look worse, completely throwing his role aside. It's great. There's also, of course, the bully gun segment, which is a standout from the episode. I also really like the pet cemetery segment. Overall, just a really funny episode, even if it is just a bunch of cutaways. Number 22. Meeseeks and Destroy. Hot take. Mr. Meeseeks isn't really that funny. Well, okay, once they reach their breaking point and they all start arguing, they're pretty funny. But when they're just Justin Roiland humor, I'm Mr. Blank, look at me, they're really not that funny. Luckily, the B plot in this episode is still good and the Meeseeks don't ruin it. The A plot is also really good, and one of the best from season 1. I love how Morty is eternally optimistic about his adventure, but Rick just wants to go home. But then they flip after the scene in the bathroom. It's just overall a really well done plot, with Rick clearly sensing something fucked up happening and putting down his defense to actually be nice to Morty for like the first time ever. I love that Rick just no questions asked kills the guy that tried to assault Morty, despite him being the king. It's a great character moment for Rick, and despite the circumstances is pretty heartwarming. I also really like the end of the B plot, with Beth, who was probably gonna leave Jerry, being the one to give him the confidence to defeat the Meeseeks. It's just a great, well-written episode. Number 21. Vindicators 3, Return of Worldender. Yes, this episode is all the way up here. This is one of the few episodes that I know has a bad reputation, and I simply do not understand why at all. The only thing I've ever heard people say to explain why they don't like it is, oh, even Dan Harmon doesn't like it. But like, that's not a criticism of the episode. Explain why you dislike it, or I'm gonna assume that's literally the only reason you do. This is a great episode too, so I have to imagine that that literally is the only reason. The plot of Rick being somewhat jealous at the Vindicators, somewhat just being an asshole, and deciding to saw them just to show Morty how dumb and pointless they are is great. It's an amazing plot for an episode, and it also leads to a whole boatload of hilarious jokes.
Morty, right?
Whoa, yeah!
I never forget a kid. Let's make this 3 for 3.
Yes. All right. Did he say 3 for 3?
Did he say he never forgets a kid?
The Vindicators themselves are all pretty good too. I especially love Million Ants.
Sweetheart?
Just let Titty Bean do this, Snuzzles. It's for the greater good.
The jokes that Rick makes at the Vindicators' expense are really funny too.
Oh, that's Million Ants. I can't see the ants from over here. I just assumed that was, Turd Man. Wiggly Turd Man.
Like I said, this is a really funny episode. Plus, the ending with Noob Noob being the one thing Rick cares about instead of Morty is a great twist. It's really funny.
No, I got emotional, but you can tell him one thing. Tell him I said... Oh, fuck. Okay, I just shit myself. Okay, later.
I guess there actually is something to criticize about this episode, and that is the fucking Logic dance party ending. That is some actual shit. But it's literally like 5 seconds, plus it leads to a hilarious end gag with Rick not even remembering who Noob Noob is. I don't know why people dislike this one. It's hilarious. It actually drives me crazy. Number 20. M. Night Shyamalan's. Starting off our top 20, we've got a classic season 1 episode. I really love the plot of this one. Both of them, actually. The main plot of Rick escaping multiple simulations as the aliens just fuck with him leads to a lot of great gags. Plus, you've got the B plot of Jerry not realizing he's in a simulation on lowest power, which is really, really funny.
And now, here's human music.
Human music. I like it.
I also love the ending with Jerry believing that the aliens outsmarted Rick, only for them to blow up. It's a really good example of what a Rick and Morty episode should be. It's not the best, but it's damn good. Number 19. Final Desmithation. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm fairly certain that this is another episode that gets a lot of flack, mostly because this episode released at the height of the Rick and Morty incest jokes, and the plot of this episode revolves around Jerry trying not to fuck his own mom. Sounds bad, but it's really not. So funny that I think this is the funniest season 6 episode, with hilarious jokes one after another, and also containing some pretty cool ideas that they explore with the fortunes that actually work, becoming a literal Fortune 500 company by selling fortunes. But the episode is of course great because of Rick and Jerry's dynamic, which
mean that this episode was always going to be a favorite of mine. But every aspect of this episode was really funny, so now it's all the way up here. We're at the end of Great Tier, the second largest tier of the whole list, so that's pretty good, right? Well, okay, it's tied with good. We've got 3 more tiers to go, so let's just move on to the Amazing Tier. Pretty self-explanatory, right? Number 18, Rick Potion number 9. When watching the show for the first time, this is probably the first episode that makes you realize how truly special and cool the show is. It starts off as a seemingly normal Morty high school love story, with him getting Rick to make a love potion, but it obviously devolves into an apocalypse, and Rick and Morty have to jump universes, which is one of the best sequences in the whole show. I love the fake out, where it seems like Rick fixed everything, only for them to blow up and die, and our Rick and Morty show up. It's pretty funny, an amazing episode for sure. Number 17. Unmort Rickon. This episode starts with a surprise Evil Morty origin story, immediately letting you know that it means business. Evil Morty is a character that we knew very little about before this episode, so seeing the events that made him the Morty we've seen throughout the show is one of the best cold opens the show has. Maybe I should rank all the cold opens. I'm genuinely considering this. Anyway, we see what Evil Morty's life is like outside the central finite curve. Incredibly chaotic, and yet you can tell he genuinely prefers his freedom from it. He is then interrupted by our Rick and Morty and their search for Rick Prime, and he and Rick end up beefing, which is really funny. Evil Morty as a foil for Rick honestly works better than I expected. It speaks volumes to the new voice actors, both of course being Justin Roiland's replacement, that they can have incredible delivery on par with stuff from Roiland. I honestly might prefer the dynamic of the new Rick and Evil Morty to the new Rick and Morty. Every line is hilarious, and we see them go from bickering over efficiency to them helping each other fight other Ricks to helping each other escape a trap. And Evil Morty even helps to fight Rick Prime, since we learn that Rick Prime created a device capable of killing all versions of someone across the multiverse, a reveal that makes sense considering all Ricks lost their Dianes, gives Evil Morty a reason to be there, while also shedding new light on Rick's backstory. Rick getting his revenge on Rick Prime in the middle of the season was not what I expected, and that's what makes it so shocking. It's also just an incredible scene. Again, credit to the voice actors, because the scene where Rick kills Rick Prime is one of the best sequences in the series.
Eventually, you did! You lived in my house!
And it's followed by another incredible sequence of Rick realizing that even after getting the revenge he's been after for decades, everything is the same. They even replay the music that played when Rick and Morty moved universe in Rick Potion number 9, showing that this is a change in Rick's life that is on par with what Morty was feeling back in that episode. It's such a great callback that adds depth to the scene, not just being fan service. I wonder if Evil Morty being the one to truly defeat Rick Prime will come up sometime later. I know the sudden killing of Rick Prime is controversial, but I don't know, I think they wanted it to be surprising that they would kill a supposed big bad like that randomly in the middle of the season and have someone else do it too. Wait a second, I just realized, was the dinosaur episode foreshadowing? Think about it. A clearly set up big plot point, one set up in season 6 episode 1, being suddenly dealt with by someone who isn't Rick. And in that episode, Rick complains about it, saying,
"We could have milked that thing for a whole season, or like a 3-episode arc at least."
The writers are playing 4D chess. Only one thing to say. Bravo, Vince. Number 16. Hot Rick. This episode truly shocked me. After a pretty mid-season of Rick and Morty, I wasn't expecting the finale to be much of note, but it delivered in every way imaginable and then some. It finally ended a small overarching story in memory Rick, and damn was it satisfying. I was on the edge of my seat for the entirety of this episode, and all the ideas that it explored were more interesting than the last. Every time I thought I knew where the episode was going, it would introduce a new, cooler direction for the episode to go, and it blew my fucking mind. One tiny nitpick would probably be that I wish Space Beth stayed dead, as the way that she was killed felt so permanent, but I don't mind that she stayed alive, especially since Rick's tech is so advanced at this point, it'd be strange for someone in the family to die permanently. Regardless, it's a phenomenal episode, and one that I can't believe came at the end of such a mid-season. Number 15. Rick, a Mort Well-Lived. I know I said this about a previous episode, but this is probably the closest they've gotten to feeling like a Season 2 episode in the last 5 seasons. Yes, it is a return to an idea from Season 2, but it does so in such an interesting and fresh way that it doesn't feel like pandering. The idea of Morty getting trapped inside Roy as all the NPCs and Rick needing to convince all of them to give up their lives is incredibly interesting, and the writers go to so many different places with it, all of which are very intriguing, which to me, more than justifies the callback.
The cold open of this episode is great and establishes everything incredibly well. And I love that all of the NPCs are voiced by Justin Roiland.
Don't be bad outside my store! I keep a nice store! Give it up, old man! We're just cool, bad kids doing young stuff!
The B-plot of Summer doing a Die Hard is pretty divisive, but as someone who has never seen Die Hard, I gotta say, I like it. Though, it maybe overstays its welcome a little bit. Not that I'm like wishing the Roy stuff got more screen time, it had as much time as it needed, but the Die Hard jokes kind of got a little old by the end, although the twist at the end is pretty great. I also really like the scene with the president of the US inside Roy. Honestly, I think most of the NPCs Martha and Rick talk to are really funny, just being Morty's general approximation of different people, all with completely different made up and vague personal lives. I think my favorite joke has to be the gibberish Yiddish Martha's dad spews out.
Dad, tell me anything specific about being Jewish. There's a million things. You go to the temple with the special hat, the falafel fluting.
Though,
man, the part of me that's my father is a twat.
That's also gonna be funny when we get back.
Is also really funny. Honestly, this episode overall has a ton of hilarious jokes, definitely earning its spot near the top, and its place as one of my favorite episodes. Number 14. The Whirly-Durly Conspiracy. Ah, the first Rick and Jerry episode. Weird that it took 3 seasons for them to explore this dynamic, but still. This is just a great exploration of Rick and Jerry's dynamic. It goes from Rick and Jerry squabbling, to getting along, to Rick wanting to kill Jerry, to Jerry being superior to Rick even. It's great. Plus, it has this cool sequence where they trip balls. It also has a pretty solid B-plot. It's not my favorite part of the episode, but it's a fairly solid story for Summer, Beth, and even Morty. Rick and Jerry is just a hilarious dynamic, so this gets in the top 20 easily. Number 13. The Vat of Acid episode. Hot take. This episode is overrated. I mean, I still put it at number 13. So clearly I don't think it's that overrated, but to be number 4 on IMDb? Really? If that doesn't tell you how good Rick and Morty is, that I can say number 13. Being number 4 out of 81 on someone else's list is a ridiculous opinion to have, I don't know what will. Anyway, this episode follows Morty as he basically reverse psychologizes Rick into making a video game save and reload device after their giant and hilarious fight over Rick's terrible acid vat plan.
Vat of fake acid? Are you dying of dementia?
A good chunk of the episode is told entirely within silent montage, a storytelling medium the Rick and Morty writers evidently love considering how much they do it. Maybe a little too much, and it's really well done. This was one of the first times that they attempted a sequence like that, and it's so long and emotionally resonant, they did a great job. Morty falling in love, going through relationship troubles, then ending up in a plane crash, but still having his love persist, only for Jerry to accidentally rewind all the way back to when Morty first meets the girl that he fell in love with. Fuck. You feel the way Morty does, and you understand why Morty just kills himself over and over. It's dark, but really great. Then, the episode ends with a bang, with Morty having to do the fake acid vat trick to get out of the consequences of what he did with the remote. It's really funny. Definitely deserves its spot in the top, just not top 5. Number 12. Morty Night Run. Another absolute classic. There's something about these season 2 episodes that just have a different vibe than the rest of them. They're easily the funniest. I feel like every single joke in this episode hits perfectly, and it's just joke after joke. The plot is also really great, with Morty's journey to save one life ultimately ending the lives of way more, only for Morty to just kill fart anyway. It's a really well written episode with so many all-time bits in it. The Jerry Beret is from this episode too, which is one of the funniest B-plots in the whole show. This is just an all-time episode. It's fantastic. Number 11. The Rick-Churian Morty Date. Hey, this is one of few Rick and Morty episodes that shares a title pun with Gravity Falls. Completely random fact, but I think about it every time I hear this episode title. I know this episode got a lot of hate when it came out, as did many season 3 episodes, and this is another one that I just don't understand. This is a hilarious episode front to back, full of great action too. Rick's beef with the president and their pissing match is incredibly interesting to watch, with just incredible banter from both Rick and Morty.
Oh, please, Morty. You pay as many taxes as you have pubes.
Oh, I got pubes, Commander and Queef. You want to count them?
I also love Rick and Morty's dynamic in this episode. I love when they're on the same team and just being bros, basically. And Rick's Minecraft subplot is honestly really funny.
Is this game popular with autistic people?
Why would you say something like that?
Because I'm starting to love it.
And the actual B-plot in this episode, Beth figuring out she's probably a clone and getting back with Jerry, is also great. I don't really understand what there is to dislike about it, other than I guess it has lower stakes than the season 2 finale and doesn't really do as much for the overall narrative as it, but like,
Who cares? It's funny. Just another episode that got caught up in the Season 3 hate train. We finished Amazing Tier, which means we're on to the final 2 tiers, containing the last 10 episodes. It's been over an hour and you haven't talked about Pickle Rick yet. Ah, I'm getting impatient. Jeez, calm down, man. I'm getting to it. Ugh, you sound like Morty. You realize that the longer I go without talking about Pickle Rick, the better the episode is? Yeah, duh. I just think the format is dumb. Why make the viewer wait to talk about the best stuff? If I wanted to hear someone talk about shitty TV, I'd hang out with Beth. Or maybe Beth, but like the space version. I'm just glad they don't watch that AI Fruit Island garbage. It's a cheap shot, but hey, I agree. Anyway, I gotta go, so I'm taking that portal gun. It's probably mine anyway. Actually, it was made by Dipper Pines. You might know his great-uncle Stanford? Son of a bitch stole my portal gun. Fine, you know what? I'll just take this one on the floor over here. What? Yep, there's just a portal gun sitting here. Must have fallen off the table. I can't believe I didn't notice that. Anyway, bye. Actually, I'm gonna go out the door first. For no particular reason. Whoa, the portal looks so cool. Anyway, let's just get back into the list. Right. Incredible tier. Top 10. Here we go. Number 10. Pickle Rick. Yes, the funny haha Pickle Rick funniest shit I've ever seen episode is ranked at number 10. This is my list, I can do what I want. I feel like a lot of the distaste for this episode comes basically purely from the video of that guy at McDonald's going, "I'm Pickle Rick!" Which, by the way, the guy who did that wasn't even a big Rick and Morty fan. He was just doing a bit. Regardless, I think this is easily one of the most misread episodes of Rick and Morty, with both fans and critics of the show not really understanding it. No, Rick turning himself into a pickle isn't meant to be funny on its own. Morty's reaction to seeing Rick as a pickle should be enough proof for people to understand that. The point is that it's dumb, useless, and clearly just an excuse for Rick to get out of going to therapy with the family. The other part of the episode I see people fail to understand is that final scene with Rick in therapy. No, the therapist is not a self-insert from the writer to tell the audience how awful Rick is. Well, okay, to a certain extent, they're not entirely wrong. But I feel like saying that that is why it was written is kind of missing the forest for the trees. The therapist is someone who has the emotional intelligence to, for the first time, challenge Rick intellectually. Obviously, she's not as smart as Rick when it comes to science, but she is far beyond Rick in terms of emotional intelligence. The entire episode shows why both Rick and his family, mostly Beth, think of him the way they do, only for the therapist to then deconstruct that line of thinking. She tells them the exact thing wrong with them, only for Rick and Beth to immediately ignore it because they don't want to hear it. I don't know if my explanation makes any sense, but yes, it is a deconstruction of Rick's character, so it does function as a way to tell the audience not to idolize Rick, but it's also a character in a show telling the other characters that idolizing Rick will basically destroy their family, as ignoring emotions to prioritize science and intelligence will just make everyone miserable. The point is to see the character's reaction to the information, not to just tell the audience how to feel. As for the rest of the episode, well, it's really funny, has great action, and I love the juxtaposition between Rick killing a bunch of people as a pickle and then the family sitting peacefully in therapy talking. It works great cutting between them. Honestly, a lot of the reasons this episode gets hate can be applied to season 3 as a whole, as it's basically the only season that has an overarching theme, that being the dismantling of Rick as a character. Was that a response to the fandom idolizing him? Perhaps, but it was also a prevalent theme with Beth before this, ignoring the needs of the family because she's so afraid of abandonment. Oh wait, sorry, I mean, season 3 sucks because it had women writing on it. I am very smart. Number 9. Fear No Mort. Much like the season 8 finale, this episode also surprised me. It also came at the end of a very mixed season. Season 7 was better than 8, but not by much. And it was a breath of fresh air and proof that the Rick and Morty writers can still make incredible episodes. At first, it seems like it's diving into Rick's character and what would happen if he got Diane back. We see him actually happy again, and we immediately understand why Rick would be in love with her. They have great chemistry. But then the episode shifts, and we see Morty try and face his fears to get out of the fear hole. It almost works, but it's just more hole trickery, and the rest of the episode is dedicated to Rick and Morty climbing out of the hole, which is a hilarious sequence as we see the ridiculous fears that they have.
$8 for a side of bacon?
Are you fucking kidding me?
It's a symptom of a larger concern, Morty.
Eventually, it gets to the point where Morty wants to give up, but Rick tells Morty that he's not leaving without him because,
Come on, you're irreplaceable.
which leads Morty to realize the horrifying truth. Rick was never even in the hole, and he was by himself the whole time. This realization is what flips the episode on its head, and it turns out it's actually an exploration of Morty and his reliance on Rick. An incredible twist. It's a great episode with great jokes, and a great exploration of the characters, including a character who never really had that much characterization to begin with, Diane. Now, whether Diane, or even Rick for that matter, act how they actually would in the real world is left ambiguous, but look what happened last time we thought something like this wasn't accurate. Rick, I can definitely believe. Diane, though? I have no idea. We've never seen Diane for more than like 10 seconds at a time, but the whole seems to be somewhat omniscient, so I would say it's fairly accurate to how the real Diane was. That just makes more sense to me. The other option is the whole uses Morty's memories and experiences to create this world, which would also make sense, but I choose to believe in the whole omnipotent theory. I'm a whole truther. Can we get a hashtag I love whole in the comments? The ending of the episode is incredible as well. Even though I was technically spoiled that Rick was never in the hole by a YouTube clip posted the night the episode came out, the episode still managed to convince me Rick was there with him, even if in the back of my head I knew it wasn't true. It's a genius twist though. Nothing throughout the episode would lead you to this conclusion, but it doesn't feel cheap because Morty was the main protagonist of the episode. We're almost entirely with Morty throughout the episode, aside from one scene. So when it's revealed that, yes, the episode was about Morty the whole time, it doesn't cheapen the episode, but enhance it. And that final scene where Rick puts Morty's picture on the wall is genuinely touching. In a way, it's Rick respecting Morty for doing what he doesn't have the bravery to do. He knows that if he was confronted with a realistic depiction of Diane, he probably wouldn't have the strength to leave without Morty by his side, which we see in the episode. That's just my interpretation of the scene though. I also really love the line where, after Morty goes through psychological torture for what must have felt like decades, Rick just asks him,
How was it? Was it spiders?
Number 8. Never Ricking Morty. The fact that this is a universally hated episode is incredibly confusing to me, because this is one of the funniest episodes of the whole show, and is one of the best applications of meta humor I've ever seen. If there is going to be an episode revolving around meta humor, this is the way to do it. Not by sending Rick and Morty to the meta dimension, but by using a metaphor to deconstruct the way the stories of the show are told, with commentary on how being a massive show owned by an even massiver corporation can affect the show. It takes place within a toy, so it's not even really canon. It's a great, creative episode that gets way more hate than it deserves. It's seriously incredible. It's hilarious throughout, too, as any good Rick and Morty adventure ought to be. I especially love the Bechdel test scene. Sure, this doesn't really feel like an episode that would have been made in the first couple seasons, but that doesn't detract from the fact that it's hilarious.
Morty, never forget the highest truth of all. You're getting your ass kicked on a train.
It's a great episode. End of story. Train. Number 7. A Wrinkle in Time. This episode is really, really good. Obviously. I have it ranked at number 7. What do you expect? The A-plot is full of a lot of clever concepts around time, which is already one of my favorite sci-fi subjects, as well as a ton of hilarious jokes and line deliveries. The B-plot is definitely the weakest aspect of the episode, but it's in no way bad. It's a cute story between Beth and Jerry where they're not arguing the whole time, but it still is what prevents this episode from being any higher than 7. So really, it's not that bad. One of the best of the grounded Rick and Morty stories, which I think is an aspect of the show that kinda got lost as it went on. It's just great all around. Take for example the Red Grin Grumble joke.
And that guy is the Red Grin Grumble to pretending he knows what's going on. You like that Red Grin Grumble reference? Yeah. Well, guess what? I made him up.
It isn't just really funny, it also portrays Morty and Summer's motivations in this episode, which is to be accepted by Rick. It's impressive how what's basically a throwaway gag manages to portray the characters in such a natural way. Just a great, hilarious episode. One of the funniest, for sure. Number 6. Close Rick counters of the Rick kind. The very first Citadel episode. And of course, it's amazing. The Citadel is responsible for a lot of Rick and Morty's best moments, so it's no surprise that the episode that started it all would be this high. However, I think the episode works best when viewed in the context of just season 1. This episode becomes like 10 times funnier if you just ignore the existence of everything that follows it up and instead treat it as a one-off episode that explores the idea. Like, The Citadel, and especially the Council of Ricks, are just hilarious in this episode. Since nothing about it was established previously, this is the only episode that basically gets to do whatever it wants with the Citadel. And none of the other Citadel-centric episodes recapture the goofy vibe the Citadel has in this one. I also think the main conflict of this episode between Rick and Morty is really strong, and I like the way the plotline develops and resolves at the end. Morty learning the truth about his relationship with Rick, which, by the way, is a pretty genius twist and provides a believable explanation for why Rick would willingly take Morty on adventures, leads to a great rift between them. I honestly just love the ideas in this episode, and I also think it's really funny. Not much more to say. And that was the end of Incredible Tier. Pretty good episodes, huh? We only have one tier left. My top 5 favorite episodes. Number 5. The Ricks Must Be Crazy. If this episode isn't at least in your top 10, who are you kidding? Rick beefing with someone on his own level for basically the first time outside of alternate versions of himself is a great concept for an episode, and this one nails it. Zeep is a great counter to Rick, basically being Rick himself, and he's a really funny character, especially with the way Rick has influenced his society's language.
Peace among worlds, Rick.
There's so many great gags here. I love the way Rick and eventually Zeep parrot Morty's issues with the microverse, but not out of any actual moral belief of their own, they only do it to keep their free energy. Also, the fact that this is what makes Zeep realize his universe is a microverse is so funny. There's also Morty turning into a car. Great bit, of course. This is just another classic Season 2 episode that hits you with hilarious joke and line delivery one after another, all while showing you interesting high-concept sci-fi shenanigans. A textbook Rick and Morty adventure. Oh yeah, Summer's there too. The B-plot is really the only time I'll say anything negative about this episode. It's not the most interesting B-plot, but I don't think it detracts from the episode. It has a few good moments, but it's overall just okay to me. Still, a phenomenal episode though. Number 4. Total Recall. Be honest, you knew this episode was going to be in the top 5 before you even clicked the video. This is probably the most universally beloved Rick and Morty episode ever, and it undoubtedly deserves it. Every facet of it works perfectly. The premise is great and keeps everything in one place, allowing for great and hilarious character interactions and dynamics. The new wacky characters are hilariously overly stupid in Rick and Morty fashion. The way they solve the conflict is perfect, there's lots of hilarious jokes, it's all just perfect. There's nothing to complain about. This is Rick and Morty firing on all cylinders. I think it demonstrates all the necessary components for a great episode of Rick and Morty. It's got an interesting sci-fi hook, the idea that the ones you know and love could be parasites that change your memories and make you think they always existed. It uses this concept to explore the relationships between the characters and see who turns on who when the situation is dire and there's no one you can trust. And it also has a clever way to solve the issue, with the idea that the parasites can only make positive memories, which in turn explores the character dynamics even more since we see their negative memories of each other and coming to terms with the fact that everyone they know is flawed and all the good people in the house were parasites. Mr. Poopy Butthole being added to the theme song is a great touch too. Also, this episode makes the existence of Interdimensional Cable 2 even more baffling, since they had a perfectly good anthology-ish episode right here. This is just an incredible episode all around, and definitely deserves its spot here in the top tier. Number 3. Rexty Minutes. Another episode that's always praised. This episode perfectly balances the hilarious and the emotional, creating a perfect Rick and Morty episode. It has the silliness of Rick and Morty watching completely improvised TV shows, and for as much shit as I give Justin Roiland sometimes for his comedy, this is just amazing. And that's not even the best part, because you also have the plot of Beth, Jerry, and Summer exploring their lives in alternate realities, with Summer coming to the realization that she was unplanned, and that Beth and Jerry live totally different lives without her, seemingly better lives, and Jerry and Beth basically compete with each other to see who can have the better life without the other. However, after Jerry goes back to watch TV with Rick and Morty, we see a reality where Jerry is a washed-up movie star on the run from the cops, and all he wants is to talk to Beth, and Beth is watching the same reality from her perspective, and it causes Jerry and Beth to realize how much they love each other again. It's amazing. Then there's also the Summer plotline, with her going to run away and Morty talking her down by bringing up how he buried himself and Rick in the backyard, the event from Rick Potion number 9, and it works beautifully. Peak Rick and Morty. Number 2. Emotional. Deep. Moving. These are all words that I would not use to describe Season 3 Episode 1 of Rick and Morty, Rick Shank Redemption, as it is a full-speed, high-octane, non-stop roller coaster of an episode. It takes Rick from his lowest point to arguably his highest, all in the span of 22 minutes of hilarious and engaging action. We start with one of the best cold opens in the show, with Rick seemingly escaping prison off-screen, only for it to be a misdirect, of course. And from there, the episode just keeps getting better. It has exposition that's both hilarious and efficient with how it establishes what you need to know, both from the Smith family on Earth and Rick and the Glomphramite in the Shoney's in Rick's mind. This episode has so many jokes, and so many of them are genuinely hilarious, like some of the funniest writing in the whole show.
Is that me? I used to wear blue pants.
I really love this scene between Summer and Morty in the garage. Not only is it really funny, but Morty's speech here, and to be honest, the episode as a whole, kinda acts as a thesis statement for season 3 as a whole, being a deconstruction of Rick, but that's a conversation for another video. Anyway, this is also the episode that originated the Szechuan sauce joke. That's how you know it's great, I think. Then we get Rick's backstory, and while I do think it's kind of lame that it ended up being his actual backstory, you can't blame this episode for that. If anything, it's a testament to this episode, considering they couldn't think up any backstory for Rick that's more interesting or satisfying than this one. I also love the way they frame Rick finding out about the interdimensional portal gun at the same time Summer gets the gun from dead Rick. Like, they're both discovering it at the same time. Pretty genius editing. The lighting in this scene is gorgeous too. Anyway, as sort of tiring the Rick is basically an all-powerful god thing became, this episode just nails it. It's so much fun to see Rick not hold back and just destroy everything in his path. It's not just satisfying, it's also really, really funny. Then, of course, we get probably the best scene in the episode, the standoff. Once again, like every other scene in the episode, it's hilarious. I've said it about 100 times now, but it's the perfect climax for the episode, and seeing Morty reach his breaking point and try and kill Rick is pretty shocking, but works really well for where his character is at this point in the series. Then, of course, the episode ends with Beth and Jerry getting divorced, which honestly is a really good plotline, regardless of where its inspiration is from. Write what you know, you know? I guess the ending of the episode is the most contentious aspect of the premiere. Most of the issues people have with this episode come from the ending. Both Jerry's departure from the household and Rick's speech at the end where he claims that he doesn't care about anyone here, only saved them for a selfish reason, and that everything he did was a plan to get Beth and Jerry to divorce. People claim that it ruins the season 2 finale because it undoes Rick's selfless sacrifice or whatever, but like, are we watching the same show? You really thought Rick was gonna turn himself in and just stay in jail for his family? No. Of course he had a plan. But guess what? Him having a plan to destroy the Federation doesn't ruin his sacrifice at the end of season 2. Him turning himself in and going to jail isn't the sacrifice he makes for his family. No, him going through the effort of collapsing the intergalactic government to free Earth from its reign is the sacrifice. Because guess what? Everything is terrible with the Federation ruling. So if Rick didn't do this, the sacrifice would have been in vain anyway. Also, when he says,
"Your mom wouldn't have accepted me if I came home without you and your sister, so now you know the real reason I rescued you,"
he's not telling the truth. He's lying. Isn't he always claiming that there's infinite versions of them he could go move in with? A lot of people really fall for Rick's mask and then get mad at the show for it. Just because Rick can do basically anything and is correct about most things in the universe doesn't make everything he says right or true. I'd love to go more in depth about how this sentiment is echoed throughout basically every episode of season 3, but I'll save that for another video. And I don't need this video to be any longer. So yeah, overall a great, witty, action-packed, and hilarious episode that works perfectly as the intro to season 3 thematically. There's really only one episode that could beat it, and that is number 1, the Ricklantis mix-up. Yeah, you probably expected this. Even more so the way I've been gassing up season 3 so much, but this episode definitely deserves this spot, inarguably. It's one of the best written episodes in the whole show. It perfectly weaves together multiple emotional and engaging storylines, effortlessly getting you invested in these random Ricks and Morty's lives, and their struggles, seeing the ways in which they're all different. It introduces a fair amount of characters, even if they're all technically 2 characters, but this episode doesn't feel rushed or like you needed more time to get emotionally attached, unlike the similar episode, The Rick, the Morton, the Ugly from season 8. I think it succeeds at everything it tries to do with these storylines. It's a pretty heavily political episode, but it works. The storyline with the coming-of-age Mortys has a pretty dark ending that always gets me a little emotional, because you actually get to see the broken system that leads them to think the way they do. And then, to top the episode off, the reveal that the President Morty we've been following the whole time is actually evil Morty? Peak cinema, I'm sorry. Did I mention it's hilarious? The Simple Ricks commercial is one of the funniest gags in the show. There's so many different versions of Ricks and Mortys, and the Citadel is always a really funny place. Honestly, I could mention every scene and talk about all my favorite jokes, from all the different Rick's responses to the questions in the debate, the class full of different Mortys, Willy Wonka Rick. I could go on. It's truly a masterpiece of an episode, and deserves its spot at number 1.
So, that was my really long list of Rick and Morty episodes. Can't wait for this video to be obsolete in like
a year? Leave a like if you're watching this video in 2029. I'll probably be making more videos like this, some even about Rick and Morty, so leave a like and subscribe if you want. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a bit of a solo adventure to go on.